There's a story that gets told about him. It's one of those stories that feels true even if you don't know the facts. It's about a recording session late at night in a studio that felt more like a garage than a palace. The man was at the peak of a great comeback. He was proving to everyone, and maybe to himself, that he still had it. The fire was back. The voice was stronger than ever. The session was rolling. They were cutting hits. Songs that would define this new chapter of his life. Tough songs, soulful songs, songs with grit and power. But then someone brought him a different kind of song. A quiet one. A gentle one. It was a song about memory. It was about a mother. The legend says he read the lyrics, and the whole mood in the studio changed. The swagger, the confidence, it all just melted away. He looked smaller, more human. He told the band to get the lights down low. He walked over to the microphone, and he sang the song. One take, that's the story. He just sang it once from beginning to end. When he was done, he turned and walked out of the room. He couldn't speak. The musicians and the producer in the control room were silent. Some say there were tears. They knew they had just captured something real. Not a performance, but a confession. A moment of pure, unfiltered grief poured into a microphone. The question is, did it happen that way? Was this song, this simple tribute to a mother, recorded in a single emotional take because the man who sang it was simply too broken up to do it again? To understand the answer, you have to understand the man. And you have to understand his mother. Their story isn't just a part of his life in many ways, it is the whole story. It's the key that unlocks everything else. He was born in a two-room house in Tupelo, Mississippi. He had a twin brother, Jesse, who was stillborn. From that first moment, he was the sole survivor, the one who lived. His mother, Gladys, never let him forget how special he was. She poured all the love she had for two sons into one. Their bond wasn't just close. It was something else entirely. They had their own language, their own private world. He was her little baby long after he was a little boy. She was the center of his universe. Growing up poor, they had nothing but each other. She was his protector, his confidante, his biggest fan. When he was a boy, she saved up money she didn't have to buy him his first guitar. She was the one who encouraged him to sing in church, who saw the light in him before anyone else did. He never made a major decision without her. When he started to become famous, the first thing he did was buy her a house. A big one, Graceland. He bought her a pink Cadillac, a car she couldn't even drive. These weren't just gifts. They were monuments to his love for her. They were his way of saying, look, Mama, we made it. All that struggling was worth it. But fame was a strange and cruel thing. It gave him everything he could ever want, but it started to take her away from him. The more famous he became, the more she worried. She was a simple countrywoman. The world of Hollywood, of screaming crowds and flashing cameras, was alien to her. She was terrified something would happen to him. She grew lonely in the big house, waiting for him to come home from a movie set or a tour. The pressure was immense. Her health began to fail. Then, in 1958, the worst thing imaginable happened. He was drafted into the Army. It was the first time they had ever been truly separated. While he was in basic training in Texas, he got a call. His mother was sick. He rushed home to Memphis. He found her in the hospital, weak and frail. He sat by her bedside, holding her hand, talking to her in their baby talk language, trying to will her back to health. But it was too late. Gladys died of a heart attack. She was only 46 years old. The man was destroyed. Not just saddened, but fundamentally broken. People who were there said they had never seen such grief. At her funeral, he threw himself over her casket, crying, begging her not to leave him. He told people his life was over, that nothing would ever be good again. A part of him died with her. He had lost his anchor, his compass, his home. The world now felt like a very big, empty, and dangerous place. He went to Germany with the army, a walking ghost. He did his duty, but the light had gone out of his eyes. When he returned to America, he was different. The wild, rebellious energy was gone, replaced by a kind of professional detachment. He made movies, he made soundtracks. He was still the biggest star in the world, but the music felt safe. It was polished and professional, but it rarely felt dangerous or real. The fire that had set the world ablaze in the 150s was now just a flicker. For almost a decade, he drifted. He was rich, he was famous. He was also deeply unhappy and creatively unfulfilled. He was trapped in a golden cage, singing songs he didn't believe in for movies he didn't want to make. The boy who had loved his mother so fiercely was now a man who seemed to have lost his way. He was isolated, surrounded by people who said yes to everything, but with no one to really talk to. He was more alone than he had ever been. Then came 1968. He decided to do a television special. The network wanted it to be a cozy, family-friendly Christmas show, but he and the director had other ideas. They wanted to remind the world who he was. For the first time in years, he stood in front of a live audience, dressed in black leather, and he sang. He sang the blues, he sang rock and roll, he sang with a passion and a hunger that people thought was long gone. The comeback special, as it became known, was a triumph. It was raw, electric, and real. It proved the king was not dead. He was back. The special reignited his creative fire. He was tired of the slick, empty Hollywood sound. He wanted to make real music again. And he knew where he had to go to do it. He had to go home. Not to Graceland, but to the musical heart of his city. He decided to record in Memphis for the first time in over a decade. He didn't go to Sun Studio, the place where it all began. He went to a place called American Sound Studio. It was a small, funky studio run by a producer named Chips Moman. And Maman and his house band, the Memphis Boys, were not impressed by big names. They were tough, respected session musicians who had played on countless soul and R&B hits. They had a sound, it was gritty, soulful, and real. There was no room for Hollywood nonsense in their studio. You came in, you did the work, and you left your ego at the door. It was the perfect place for a king to become a musician again. The sessions in January and February of 1969 were legendary. The atmosphere was electric. He was working with a band of his peers. They pushed him. He pushed them back. The music they made was some of the best of his career. Songs like In the Ghetto and Suspicious Minds were born in that room. He was singing with a depth and a maturity he had never shown before. He was singing about life, about pain, about doubt. He was singing like a grown man, and it was during these intense, productive sessions that someone brought him the song. The one about the mother. It was written by a young songwriter named Johnny Christopher. The lyrics were incredibly simple. They weren't overly poetic or dramatic. They were just a series of small, perfect memories. A little boy talking about his mom, how she liked the roses, how she kept a garden, how she would take him to church on Sunday, how her Bible was worn, how she would tuck him into bed and kiss him goodnight. The last verse spoke of her being gone now, of how things had changed, how Dad was lonely, and how the boy missed his mama's smile. You have to picture the scene. Here is this man, the biggest star on the planet, in the middle of a career-defining recording session. He is surrounded by the best musicians in town, and he's handed this piece of paper with these simple, childlike words on it. But for anyone else, it might have been just another sentimental country song, a little piece of fluff to put on the B-side of a single. But for him, it was not a song. It was a diary entry, it was a photograph, every line was a direct hit to the heart. His mother, Gladys, loved flowers. She had tried to keep a garden at Graceland. She was a deeply religious woman whose Bible was her constant companion. The song was about a universal experience, but for him it was intensely personal. It was his own life, his own loss, his own mother, staring back at him from the page. This is where the legend of the one-take recording comes from. The story goes that he told Chips Moman he wanted to cut the song right then and there. The lights were dim, the musicians, sensing the shift in the room, played with a quiet, respectful touch. He stepped to the microphone and delivered a performance of breathtaking vulnerability. It wasn't about hitting the high notes or showing off his vocal power. It was the opposite. He sang it softly, almost in a whisper. You can hear the fragility in his voice. You can hear the lump in his throat. It's a performance that is almost uncomfortable to listen to because it feels so private. It feels like you are eavesdropping on a man's most intimate moment of grief. When the last note faded, there was silence. He didn't want to talk about it. He just left the studio. The producer and the band knew they had captured lightning in a bottle. They wouldn't dare ask him to sing it again. How could he? He had left a piece of his soul on that recording. So, is the story true? Did he record it in one take? The technical answer is no. But the emotional answer is yes. And that's a more important distinction than you might think. The session logs from American Sound Studio are meticulous. They show that the band, the Memphis Boys, recorded the instrumental backing track first. This was standard practice. They worked out the arrangement, got the feel right, and laid down the music. This took several takes to get perfect. He wasn't in the room singing with them. He recorded his vocal later, overdubbed onto the finished instrumental track. The logs show that he sang the song 4 times. The master version that we hear on the record is listed as Take 4. So, factually, the one-take story is a myth. He didn't walk in, sing it once, and walk out. He sang it 4 times. But that's where the facts end and the truth begins. Why would a story like this get started, and why would it persist for decades? Why do the musicians who were there when they tell the story remember it with the weight and awe of a singular event? Because the spirit of the legend is true. Think about what it must have taken for him to sing that song even once. It had been just over 10 years since his mother's death, but the wound was still fresh. He never truly got over it. He rarely spoke of her in public because it was simply too painful. Now, he was in a recording studio, a professional environment, and he was being asked to sing a song that was a direct portal to his deepest pain. The first few takes were likely him trying to get through it, finding the right phrasing, the right emotional tone, without completely breaking down. He was a professional, he knew how to deliver vocal, but this was different. He wasn't playing a character. He was being himself, the little boy who missed his mom. The fourth take, the one they kept, must have been the one where he let go, where he stopped trying to sing the song and just let the emotion flow through him. That's what we hear on the record. It's not a polished performance, it's a raw nerve. You can hear the catch in his voice, the slight tremor. It feels like he is on the verge of tears throughout the entire song. It has the emotional immediacy of a first take because it was a singular emotional event. He found the place he needed to go to, and he poured it all out. So, while he may have sung it 4 times, the performance that became the master was, in essence, a one-take emotional event. He couldn't have faked that feeling. He couldn't have manufactured that level of vulnerability. He had to live it. He had to go back in time to that hospital room in Memphis, the funeral, to the empty house, and bring all that pain into the vocal booth with him. The other musicians and the producer in the control room would have felt it. They would have known they were witnessing something profound. The memory of the event, the sheer emotional weight of it, would have overshadowed the technical details. It wouldn't matter if it was take 1 or take 4. What mattered was the feeling in the room. What mattered was the truth of the performance. Over time, the story gets simplified. The memory gets polished. He sang it 4 times, and the last one was the one becomes he sang it once and walked out. The legend is a more potent, more direct version of the truth. It captures the essence of what happened that night. The story also endures because it confirms what we want to believe about him. We don't want to think of him as just a product, a carefully managed superstar. We want to believe that underneath the jumpsuits and the gold records, there was a real person with a real heart. This story proves it. It shows us the man behind the myth. It reveals the source of his art. So much of his best music was rooted in the gospel and blues he grew up with, the music his mother loved. This song was a direct connection to that source. It was his way of talking to her, of honoring her memory, in the only way he knew how. It also speaks to a universal truth about grief. Grief isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to carry. For 10 years, he had carried the loss of his mother. In that studio, for a few short minutes, he put it down. He let the world see it. He turned his personal pain into a piece of art that could comfort others. Anyone who has ever lost a parent, especially a mother, can hear their own story in that song. His performance is so honest that it becomes a vessel for our own feelings. The fact that it wasn't a hit single is almost irrelevant. It was released as the B-side to The Wonder of You. It wasn't designed to climb the charts, it was something more personal. It was a statement. A quiet moment of reflection in the middle of a thunderous comeback. It was him reminding himself and the world of where he came from. So, did he record the song in 1 take because he was too emotional to do it again? The literal answer is no. But the real answer is yes. The legend is true in all the ways that matter. It captures the emotional reality of a moment when a global icon took off his crown, stepped up to a microphone, and sang a simple song for his mother. He had to, sing it a few times to get it right, but the feeling he captured was a singular, unrepeatable event. It was the sound of a heart breaking, quietly, in a darkened studio in Memphis. The song was Mama Liked the Roses.